There we go.
Okay, let us call the February 16th meeting of the Exeter Public Art.
You're
Here. Let us call the February 16th, 2022 monthly meeting of the Bexley Tree of Public Gardens Commission to order and call the roll. Vice Chair Larry Hellman is absent. Sheila Straub. Here. Dave Wakeman is absent. Celeste Williams. Here. Jim Wilson is absent. Linda Zupnik. Here. Susan Quintens, Chair, here. We have a quorum. Alternate Barb Giller. Barb, can you unmute yourself?
Sorry, there you go. Here.
Okay, Ellen Bowden ex officio.
Here.
Molly O'Donnell ex officio. And then we also have Mayor Ben Kessler, staff consultant Elena Andrews. City Council liaison Lorianne Feibel is not feeling well. Grant Archer has COVID. Jordan Cavallero is unable to attend, but we have two special guests.
Ooh.
Andy
Yay.
Bayshore, Service Director, and Kyle Sprague, Right-of-Way Coordinator. So we have a quorum. We can move forward. I like approval of the minutes of January 19th, 2022.
I move that we approve the minutes from the January meeting.
Is there a second? Second. Is there any discussion? A motion has been made and seconded that we approve the meeting, the minutes of the meeting of January 19th, 2022 as emailed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. All right, are there any additions to the agenda? There are no additions, but there might be some deletions depending on if Mr. Wilson comes or not. I did say to him, I thought it was important that he be the one that lead us through the Canopy study summary instead of us tackling. I mean, you know, we could tackle it on our own, but I think he has the overall view, so that's good. Mr. Sprague and Mr. Bayshore work on a different schedule than the rest of us do, so they are already past the end of their day, and we're lucky to have them here today. Kyle, maybe you'd like to come forward to the stand so you can be heard in the microphone. And if we need to get Andy up there, we will. You need to press the green button. Okay, yeah. So Mr. Sprague is the right-of-way coordinator. You've been in the job 2 years, is it?
I've been with the city for almost 8 years.
But in the right-of-way coordinator position?
In the right-of-way coordinator position, not quite a year yet.
Okay.
Coming up on it though.
Okay. Andy was nice enough to give me a little purpose of this position that I'm going to read to help us frame our questions. And this is a skilled position, the coordinator for the service department, which requires knowledge of the right-of-way and utility lines. Work assignments will vary within the inspection area. Mr. Sprague or the qualified candidate exercises independent judgment and discretion in the interpretation and application of state laws, and this position reports to Andy. So I think, Kyle, if you just give us a little overview of what you see are, you know, sort of the essential elements of your position.
Okay.
And then we can, you know, walk through, you know, some of the questions everybody has.
Okay.
And try and understand better how the focus of the tree commission integrates with the work that you're doing in the right of way.
Okay. So basically on a daily basis, my work starts with logging into our viewpoint system, which is where contractors can register themselves to work in the city of Bexley. And then with that, that's how they apply for permits, whether it be building permits or food truck permits, right-of-way permits. Basically, any permit that the city has is done on the viewpoint system. So with that, if a right-of-way permit is pulled, that gets sent to me. What I do with it is I go through, make sure that they have all the information that we are requesting. With that, I take into consideration the plans that they've uploaded, the work that they're trying to do. Basically, I take it all in and I assess it, manage it, take a look at it and decide if it's a good fit for the city to be whatever it is placed in the right of way, Once it's approved through the viewpoint system, then it's eyes on site. So I go out and I physically watch these contractors do the work that they're doing, making sure that they're doing it the way they say they're going to do it, and then making sure that it's done to Bexley City standards. Once everything is done, then I go back into viewpoint and close out everything. With that, Columbia Gas is a big permit puller. All of the excavation that Columbia Gas does in the city, it goes through me, so I manage their whole account. Any contractor really that digs in the right of way is who I maintain, whether it's just communication with them or physically eyes on site, making sure that they're getting it done to Bexley standards.
So how, if you look at your week, how much a percentage of your time would be dealing with a major utility like Columbia Gas or Spectrum, AT&T versus working with a construction company that's redoing a house or doing a new build?
Well, if there's a construction company redoing a house, that's not me.
But if anything happens in the right of way, that's not you either then?
No, that is incorrect. If it happens in the right of way, whether it be a water line being replaced or a sewer line being replaced, then I go out and would do the inspection for it.
Okay,
Anything past the right of way is.
right.
building
Yeah, I know that,
department.
but I meant within the right of way.
As far as time spent, right now it's a little bit slower time for companies to be out doing a lot of right-of-way stuff. We still have some out there doing them, so I spend my time with them, making sure that they're doing what's correct. Right now, it's about 50-50. I 50% of the time's out in the field, 50% is doing paperwork, making sure that all the reports are logged and filled out correctly.
Some questions from tree commission members.
So if somebody comes, I mean, I understand the utility thing you're going to deal with, but like somebody's building a house and they need to, did it first go to you to find out where they're infringing or involved with the right of way, or does that always go to building first?
That would be building department, and they would have to have a surveyor come out and designate where their property lines are and where the property lines for the city, where the right-of-way start.
And I have a question based on different codes and.
Celeste, can you turn your mic on?
Oh.
Thanks.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Based on new products that are out and safety measures, how long does one permit, does a company or whatever, how long does that permit last? Do they have to renew it so many years, in so many years?
Typically, a permit lasts for 1 calendar year. I think we have granted a few extensions here and there if it's going to take them a little bit longer than a year to get.
So you have to go through this every year then to look at everybody's qualifications?
On a daily basis, I go
On a
through,
daily
make sure the
basis.
contractors that have pulled permits are registered with the city, and then that they're
Okay.
following up
So it's
with,
not just a project that you see, you're also
no.
re-enlisting people
yeah,
based on how often they come back to do business in Bexley.
right.
Okay, thank you.
Barb and Ellen, if you have questions, jump in or give us a little ring so that we know. So that, yeah, so we know. So I had a little pre-meeting with Kyle and just asking some questions. And one of my main questions was, how is he a person of the court? So can he do code enforcement? And so Kyle, do you want to just chat a little bit about what we're talking about?
I don't do anything with the codes that the city has in place. The only thing that I would deal with would be the right-of-way issues, that the construction issues in the right-of-way. So if there's code issues, that would be code enforcement.
Right.
I don't have the authority and I can't help with that.
So one of the questions we sort of touched on was, how do you integrate what you're doing with code enforcement, or don't you see that there's any overlap there? It's just two separate silos.
I think it's just two separate entities there. I'm the construction side of it, and code enforcement would be the enforcer of the codes that are in place by the city.
Sheila, do you have some questions?
Put my little, so when we have people that plant little gardens in the tree lawn area, would that fall under your, no, that's
would be
under
code
the code.
enforcement, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for your good work.
So the protection of the trees during construction, does that fall under you or is that code?
Grant has asked me to assist with that. So if I know there's construction going on at a property, and they are going to be using the right of way for an entry and exit point, I will make sure that the tree protection is up. If it's not, I will go to Grant and say, hey, this address, these people are doing the work. How do you want to address it? And usually he will say, I'll take care of it and give him a call.
Okay. Well, I think that has been much more visible in the last 6 months,
Yeah.
even the last 4 months.
Yep.
So however you and Grant are working that out, we owe you some gratitude for taking that on. A couple of questions I had to do with the utilities, like on Broad Street, there's this pole sticking up on the north side and the right of way between maybe Cassidy and Ardmore. That's, one of the, those ones that they
Mhm.
stick up and they could be, I think they could be capped, but is that something that would fall in your area?
It's definitely something that I could take a look at to
Okay.
see what utilities on there, if there is any utilities on it. If it's vacant, then we can try to get it removed. Figure out who the owner of it is. That's going to be the hardest part.
Okay.
But that's something that we could.
Well, it's one of those white PVCs with the orange top on it, whatever it is. So I'll take a picture and send it to you. How's that?
That'll work.
Okay.
Another question, if you're driving around and you see something like you saw that people are putting things into the right of way, that's still, if you see that, do you report that, or is that not something that would be,
Honestly, I don't know all the codes that go into place with that.
okay?
So if I see it, I don't know if it's wrong or not.
Oh, okay. I mean, anything on the tree lawn can't be there except trees,
Okay.
but yeah.
Yeah. So, so kind of my other question would be that, in looking at plans for, let's say, the terminus of a utility line, I am sometimes disheartened when I see, what I think of as special places like Drexel Circle and the tree lawn there end up with these, plastic boxes on the top that I think is where the utility line ends and they're, 2x4 or 3x5. Is there any proactive way that those could be looked at so they don't end up in an area that has, special attention or meaning for us?
Depending on the size of the area, I'm sure there could be corrections made. Just for an example, if there's a company that's going to come in and bore in a utility line, they can only usually go 500 foot with a bore shot, is what they call it. It's basically how long their rods can expand. I'm sure you could go to the beginning of, let's just say, Drexel Circle South, going north, and hopefully that would get you to the northernmost part of Drexel Circle. So you could kind of, depending on the placement, you could try to eliminate anything within that specific area.
Okay.
But that's only going to work on certain circumstances.
Would you be willing to take a walk with me so that I could show you some of the areas that?
So if it's in the ground now, it's going to be really expensive to get it redone.
It is in the ground now. I mean, both of them are in the ground now, but those provide learning opportunities for us another time. I mean, the one was bad enough, and the two, in my opinion, is not the direction we want to go. So if we can learn from that, perhaps there won't be a third.
Yeah, I mean, that would be up to Andy if he would allow that or not.
Okay.
I would have no problem with it, but
Okay.
he's.
We'll talk to him sweetly and see.
He walks pretty quickly though, so you.
I got short legs.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. No, that'd be great because, we learn from experience.
Right.
And, if we knew then what we know now, neither of them would be there, I would hope.
Yeah.
I would hope. Other questions? Ellen, Barb, do you have any questions for Kyle? No?
I had, I think that what would be helpful, Kyle, is like for us to be able to be like, okay, so where are like the sacrosanct areas that we're like, we don't want to junk it up. So it would be like Drexel Circle, Commonwealth, the entry to Jeffrey Park. We were talking about that utility pole, right, at the meeting that we had a couple of weeks ago. So I think, Havenwood, I think that just, if you're aware that, the city and the tree commission would like to keep those as clean as possible, and anything, and we know that we can't have, everything, hidden utility wise. But if there is an opportunity to sort of say like, oh, we've got to go through Drexel, rather than, letting the engineer decide, oh, well, this is where I'm going to put it because this is my 500 feet and it just happens to fall right at Drexel, to be like, okay, we'll stop it early and then go it, even if you have to have 2 boxes versus 1, we would rather do that versus, just so we can be, kind of ahead of it. So I think if from a design perspective that you've got, the tree commission and people like me who are like, oh, that's so ugly, can we work on that? The other small thing that I had is the brick curbs and details. Is that something that you pay attention to at all in terms of during the construction? Because I know we've done a bunch of details of like how to protect the curbs and what we need to do and all of that. Is that something that you're aware of or that you would deal with, or from a construction standpoint with the utilities, just, to make sure that we're protecting those where we can?
As far as the or the curb aspect of it, I believe that'd be under streets.
Okay,
Um,
so not so much you. Okay,
Not so much me, but to that, there is a portion of it that I would deal with. The downspouts for like gutters.
okay,
If it's on a brick curb, one of the things I've really been enforcing lately is the clay discharge.
Right.
I don't like the looks of the white pipe coming through, the green, whatever color it is. So I've been really sticking people to that, the clay discharge,
okay.
at least in the brick portion of it. Once it's outside of the brick, it can go back to plastic or whatever they want to put in there, but
Okay,
I think
that is
that's
one
in the
thing that I have
detail
been working
anyway,
on.
isn't it?
I'll double check to
Well,
see.
it wasn't the MKSK one 400 years ago, so,
Eh.
yeah. So Andy, who would be the streets then that would check on the brick curb? Okay, so sometime in the next couple of weeks, could you send us his email? Then we can do that. So any other questions for Kyle? Or any quick questions for Andy? I did ask Andy before we started if he had a list of the streets that were going to be paved next year, because sometimes that's a good way for us to look at the streets and add some more trees once it's done being repaved. And he said it's not finalized yet, but he'll send it with Kyle or with Grant next month. Okay, anything else? Okay, Kyle, thank you very much for coming.
No problem. Thank you.
Really appreciate your work, and I'm glad that we've made your acquaintance, and we'll invite you back when we have some other, maybe more specific questions. Okay, and does anybody have any questions for Andy, our service director, or should we let them go finish their day? Okay, thank you, Andy, for coming. Appreciate you coming with Kyle. Okay, so now we're going to go into announcements and small victories. I wanted to just update a couple of you on Arbor Day all April long. If you look at the second page of the agenda, I don't know if you can scroll down to that. I started putting a list together of some of the things that we're planning. I wanted especially to call your attention to the April 11th book discussion that the library is hosting by a female author who is an arbornaut. There are astronauts. I think there are now gastronauts, people who are gastronomically interested, but not challenged, interested. And so they're calling themselves gastronauts. And now we have an arbornaut. And she is, Dr. Meg Lohman is going to be on a Zoom book discussion April 11th, the library's putting on. And then we have a lot of other things on the list to making Arbor Day a celebration all April long. So just mark that. And then let's go back to our Hugsy website. I asked Elena if she could pull that up again because I wanted to show you how Bexley scored. Did you get that one? Yeah, did you get that? If we can get that. We talked last time. To the ranking counties. How green is your city? If you go to the ranking. Right there. Okay, now go to Bexley, Ohio, Elena. Way up there in the Midwest. Okay. You can go right there, that's it. Bexley City Hall. Okay, our ranking is a B minus. We talked last time about how we compare with other cities, but here, if you go through, you'll see why we're B minus. Percentage of urban green space, the average health of the urban vegetation, the urban green space per capita, the distribution of urban green space, percentage of green space covered by grass, and percentage of urban. Now, if we are going to increase our grade, we need to upgrade in some of those areas. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's really a great website. So there's that. And then our March meeting is going to be on March 23rd. That date works for most people, and spring break will be over. Our trees for Bexley, we had some more money coming in. Ellen, do you have that figure quick?
Yes, I do. At the end of last month, January, I reported $33,300. And as of today, we have $34,080.
Great. And I think, as we know, all this money is focused on updating Jeffrey Mansion's plant material and landscape. And then
Right.
Planet Geo has a once a month newsletter. Again, Elena, if you could. Okay. Can you see this, everybody? I've been really impressed with the fact that Planet Geo is so data driven. They're doing things that I hardly understand, and they're continuously updating their information from probably drones and satellites. This magazine is offered free monthly, and I talked with them, and they will make it available to anybody on the tree commission that wants it. I will send you the link, and you sign up individually for it. So I'll send you the link, but I wanted a little preview, and they said it'd be good timing because they're just getting ready to upload the Bexley case study. One last announcement. It's too bad Jim Wilson's not here, but Natalie just told me that Jim is a newly appointed board member at the library, and that's
Oh.
good. So that's good stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we didn't know that, so. Okay, we have no requests from residents. We have no landscape applications to review. So without too much ado, I'd have to say that maybe the mayor's report is the most important thing we have on the docket today.
No pressure.
No pressure, yeah.
Actually, if you can tell a couple jokes, I can get some resources
Okay.
in my office for this. So I will
Well,
be right
the
back.
last time I told jokes was when I gave a speech, and it was the worst speech I ever gave. I don't know if it was because of the jokes, the microphone, or the audience, but I'm not doing jokes anymore. I learned my lesson. So we could talk about spring flowers. John Offenberg said his snowdrops were up. Molly, do you have anything up in your yard? You do? I noticed my penstemon was looking really good. It was really starting to green up. Yours are up?
Okay.
Your what rose? Okay. So since we met the last time, the mayor's had a city council meeting featuring the Drexel plan. The night after our meeting, he had a meeting on the Livingston Avenue corridor. The night of our meeting, he was
Yes, sorry.
the night of our meeting, he was doing, or maybe it was the night of our meeting, he was doing a Drexel plan. So he's been busy, and he's been doing a lot of plans.
We've been doing plans. So we have a draft final plan for Livingston Avenue, which is under technical review with Columbus and us right now, and is about to be distributed to the steering committee to review. and vote on, but that's very exciting. So that came out of our, this is after our final public workshop about it. And the next step is for this to go to city council. And it has, we've talked about some of the components of that. So I wouldn't say that there's anything entirely new in the final draft, Elena, although I haven't looked through the whole thing yet. So I'm not. I think
Me
it was
neither.
just honed a little bit after the public workshop. And we'll distribute that once it's gone through technical review and has a chance to get distributed to steering committee as well. I don't.
Will Columbus City Council also have to look at it, or is that not at their level?
So there's I'm not clear
sure.
on that.
Okay.
I would, it's not my city
That's your call.
to get involved in, but I would encourage that to happen. So I'll be reaching out if appropriate and as appropriate to try to encourage that. But I think, they have different ways that they approve of different plans. So the way, Molly, I'm not going to ask Molly to opine on that. So any questions on Livingston? I know that's kind of a vague update, but the plan will come to council probably in early April, I would imagine.
Would the plan also have a timeline?
Yeah, so there's sort of near term and short term or long term. The timelines aren't, I don't think, explicitly defined by the plan. They're more like funding based. So the short term, we know that Columbus has already funded many of the short term items in their current budget. So we'll expect them to happen this year. That would be the striping changes on the residential portion of Livingston. And then there are other short-term options that we've already started working on. Like with some of our tactical urbanist plantings and that sort of thing. And we'll have some art type installations and some other things I think that we can do short-term. Long story short, I don't think it's defined as an actual number of years or anything, but I could be wrong. The more permanent changes to the residential district, with medians and kind of moving sidewalks and tree lawns is like a 5 to 7 year program timeline based upon the federal funding that would be sought for that type of a project.
Okay. Think of just how old you'll be in 7 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, you blink and it'll get there.
Right. We know that.
I do have a question. So the project, is it obvious to you that the project on Fifth Avenue going up to, and Cassidy going up to 7th, is that much a greater priority for the city of Columbus?
I wouldn't say that, and I can't represent that, but I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think they sought federal funding for that project and received it years ago. They're about to start, their timeline shows that project launching at the end of 23. But it was back in
2012.
18, 17 or something. So it's a long, it has to do with when it's applied for.
Yes.
And then how long it takes to get the type of funding they seek. We actually don't go after the type of funding that they use for these corridors. So I'm not that familiar with it, although my understanding is Columbus wants us to be a party to the application for Livingston. So we're about to get familiar
Okay,
with it, I think.
great. Thank you.
Right like a bridge over Alum Creek at Astor.
Well, it was about funding.
We have applied for a state capital funding for the bridge at Astor. It would be a pedestrian bike bridge. It would have paved connection from Astor to the multi-use path on Elm Creek Drive on the west side, which would be really exciting. And if you want an idea of where that lines up, if you go to Elm Creek Drive and the new flashing beacons to the
Yes.
crosswalk, it's pretty much where Astor is.
Yeah.
So it would be a very similar alignment, which then in turn provides access to Hanford Village Park, which is another park right there across the street. So
And also if you're there and you're actually walking, if you look and see where there's a massive sycamore, like massive,
Yes.
it's right there.
we're gonna call it Sycamore Bridge.
Yep.
Why not? Yes, we're actually pretty excited to feature that. It's a really cool sycamore. So hopefully that comes through. We should know March, April timeframe if we have the state capital funding. And if we do, I think it's a go. It's not all the money that we're asking that we need for it, but I think it's enough that we'll be able to put together other pieces for that. So that's exciting. It was in our Elm Creek Park plan. It was in the Southwest Bexley Master Plan. It was in the Rapid 5 regional MORPC plan. And what's fun is if you go back to the land use strategy, so 2011, Larry Hellman sketched out exactly this bridge, right where it was. Like, I forgot about that. I went back to it, it's like, yep, he called it. That's right where,
He should be in urban planning.
I know, who knew?
Who knew?
Cassidy and Fifth Avenue, I think I kind of just tipped the hand on that. It looks like a 2023 start. We are hoping to move the wall in the fall of 23. So if we move the wall and we,
The project doesn't happen? No.
yeah,
it's a
no,
Joke.
we'll know well enough if it's going to happen and we can get that done. You know, we can do most of the work kind of late summer, early fall, and then if there's any planting that needs to fall planting, we can do fall planting that would stay away from their construction zone. So behind the wall sort of planting in time, I think, with that.
You're talking about the west side.
Yeah, west side.
East side stays.
Yeah, correct.
Because we had talked one time about bringing it parallel to, or, sequentially together, not having to move the wall, but it sounds like moving the wall is the right
requirement.
idea.
Wall needs to move.
Wall needs
Good news is they're gonna get the easement that's needed for the wall to be legally in place in the first place. So, hey, it'll be both moved and properly entitled. So silver linings, I guess.
So what was the result of your Drexel Avenue meetings?
The result of the meetings, we had a neighbor workshop, I think, that coincided with the end of the tree commission meeting last time, or I think even overlapped with it.
Right.
Sorry about that. And there was concern from the neighbors about the idea of a bike lane option. There are two options. One was bike lane, one was median. And then, so we, after the, at the end of the meeting, sort of read the room and said, and we had bike advocates there who really wanted bike lanes. So that wasn't like a clear consensus from the community, at least, as to what to do with it. So I suggested that we would send a new letter out to the residents on Drexel and advertise that we would talk about it more at the next city council meeting, because I wanted city council to have a chance to weigh in on it as well, so that I wasn't solely responsible for that decision. So we had a meeting. We probably had more emails on this topic than I think any other single topic I can think of in terms
Wow.
of just the amount of emails, which was interesting. So we had a lot of interest from the community. A lot of residents on Drexel had other opinions about it. And then bike advocates, both locally in Bexley and also regionally, were weighing in on the idea. So it was a packed house inside here and in the lobby, but it was I thought, a productive and cordial meeting. I think everyone got a chance to speak their mind. We had staff on hand with some recommendations, and ultimately, after conversation with council, we determined that the approach we're going to go with was the median, two-sided bump out, no bike lane approach. And I have some draft schematic here. It's not a scroll plot. It's like you'd have to actually kind of lay it out. So I'm going to just pass this around so you guys can take a look at it.
Why don't you, start with Molly's
Start with
sheet.
Molly.
No, look at it first, Molly. You understand
But-
it. and-
The gist is I showed you at the last meeting, the two different concepts. The gist is the same as the second or the first concept, with the medians in places where physically able to be put, sheltered parking. There is a net reduction in parking on Drexel with this, because it provides better protection at the intersections. So there's more of a sight triangle and there's more green space. So there is a net parking reduction. But it is not it's not the same as the bike lane option that had parking lost on the west side of the street. So when you look at it, and actually that might be a great way to do it. Molly's laid this out, kind of walk around and see it. But you start to see, especially north of Fair, the number of medians that can be worked in will make a real difference in calming and narrowing that street. So I'm excited about it. I think it'll be a substantial upgrade in terms of pedestrian safety. And it will definitely have drivers wanting to drive slower on Drexel. I was just reading a report from the Smart Growth America group that does complete streets stuff about, they do this study of traffic or pedestrian accidents and just how they're actually increasing in the past 10 years, and how street construction needs to work to slow traffic and discourage pedestrian hits. And what we're doing here, like, is a poster child for exactly what they're talking about. It's kind of exciting.
Have they done any sketch of what the median will look like? Any profile or?
Yeah, we were just thinking like AstroTurf, maybe in the middle. That's what Elena was recommending.
Yeah, I know. Well,
It's low maintenance.
yeah, it's.
Yeah,
low
maybe like
maintenance,
we
yeah.
thought we would have like a different colored garden gnome on each, in each median as a
Yeah.
vertical element.
Some plastic bushes and maybe some collection of things we can, stick in, just styrofoam on the bottom, and you can put new.
Exactly. Just pin things in.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's a 5-foot planting bed.
Okay.
It's actually a 4-foot planting bed, a 5-foot median, I think. So it's 6 inches curve. So it would support shrubs or understory trees probably. So I think that is a design that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. A resident today pointed out to me that redbuds are native trees. She's an advocate for native plantings. So I note that to the tree commission.
Right.
I think the thing that we'd want to, flowering trees or not, I mean, it's going to we probably want it to be somewhat small ornamental because we've got already a lot of maples down there and
Right.
everything. So we don't want to have too much kind of competition.
Yeah.
So,
Or I mean, it might be an opportunity for just well-maintained, low growth
rubbery.
shrubbery.
It could, I agree.
Especially because as it's, a lot of them are being used at pedestrian crossings, so they're almost landings. I don't love the idea of vertical elements,
Yeah,
like
I
tall
understand
vertical
that.
elements and pedestrians in the same spot. So something to think about. A little bit of a different context in other areas where we have.
Yeah,
And
well,
yet-
there are a lot of medians around Columbus that just have shrubs. I mean,
Yeah.
Muirfield has a lot of those kind of medians. So
Mhm.
might be worth driving around to see.
Look, if we have a tree of any sort, particularly if it's a flowering budding tree, that trucks will take part of it out. Just like the cherry trees on Fifth
Yeah.
and Cassidy, that they're not sustainable.
Right.
I have a question. I have a good friend who lives on Drexel who never been involved in any city things and then tells me she goes to this meeting and people are just, they don't want any of this stuff, like, leave my street alone. I'm like, and they were very upset about the fact that when we planted the trees, some in the tree lawn and then the big ones behind the sidewalk, she said several of her neighbors just pulled out the trees. I'm like, I don't know if I followed up on or something. I can, send a note to Grant to have them look at that, but I was just shocked to hear how much they don't want anything done. I'm like, really?
Yeah, I think I think change is difficult for people.
Yeah,
And I think that it's difficult if you're not used to looking at plans all the time, like we are, like it's hard to kind of take that 2-dimensional aerial view and imagine in your mind what that looks like. And because it was viewed, this is really infrastructure first, then landscape. It wasn't like we were going out and getting 3-dimensional renderings of a new condition. And even if we were, people still have a hard time attaching to those representations. So I don't think it's not unexpected to me that you would have people that would feel like any change is bad. Having said that, those same people, I think, were generally reaffirming that they wanted a slower street and they wanted 25 miles an hour, and you cannot get 25 miles an hour without changes to the street. So I think this, because it's a federal route, so it has different rules. So I think that when that became clear, hopefully they heard that, and maybe they didn't, but we tried.
so Ben, does this have a bike lane or not?
This does not have a dedicated bike lane, right? So it'll have share row markings, which is just indicating that bikes could be on the street.
Yeah.
One thing I think we're not going to have that's in that schematic, and we're waiting for some changes to it, is the yellow markings of like the painted medians.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't love
It's just too, it's too infrastructure-y. And so we're trying to have this treated like other secondary residential streets that don't have any striping at all.
Like Broad Street with the brick, but that's.
Yes. That, and also, I mean, from a
Jim
bike,
Wilson.
bike,
There he is. Yay.
one of the concerns from the cyclists was that this plan actually can decrease the safety of cyclists because it further narrows the street. So by not striping that median, you kind of give drivers a little more comfort in biking around or driving around cyclists.
Mhm.
Yes, there's many other. Yeah, they are like Parkview slated as a bike boulevard and there's some others. So
Well, I think that you've done amazing work. I mean, people actually have been talking about medians on that street for a long time. So to have some movement toward that is a
Yeah.
huge victory.
So I'd love to have obviously the tree commission involved in the design piece of what goes in. The medians, I'm assuming that the bump outs are just expanded tree lawn probably, but any feedback would be great. I was going to start working with Elena and coming up with some concepts.
Well,
That's good.
I mean, as we know, the three elements that we talk about all the time are brick, pillars, wrought iron. Probably pillars and wrought iron won't work there. Brick could.
Maybe it's a narrower median.
Oh,
So,
I was thinking me, I was thinking like bump out.
oh, sure. Mhm.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
haven't seen them, but
Cool.
yeah.
Worth thinking about.
Well, I'm sure that what should I say, the pending success did not come up without some pain. So congratulations for staying the course.
Or
Yeah. So we're just
Trying to respond.
reviewing the Drexel Avenue option. Okay.
So the mayor was spared me asking questions about what are we gonna do about those people that take a left-hand turn at Drexel. So
So he's got that taken care of.
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
no, yeah.
But on Bright Street, see if you look out the line. It backs up all the way. Columbia, yeah. Oh,
Stacking, yeah.
really?
So Mayor, do you want to talk about how the police chief search is coming? I think your emails have been really terrific, chatty, but informative.
Kill
I mean, I
them,
think that's
kill them with detail.
Well, I think that's a great way to communicate. I mean, you let them in and then you give them the information. So
Thank you. So, yeah, we have had, we're doing a lot of work, reaching out to different groups this month and Saunders Company's helping with us with that. They've had several meetings so far with different community stakeholder groups. We have our first general public workshop tomorrow evening at 7, I think, or 6, it's on our calendar. And then we have a daytime one next week at noon or 11:30. I'm really giving you guys great info. 6 p.m. tomorrow, 11:30 on February 23rd. And it's a registration Zoom-based webinar. Just getting feedback from people about kind of what they want to see in the next police chief and the future of the police department. And from all of that, their community survey that went out on the blast, we've had a lot of results from that so far, but we're still taking in more through next week. And they're putting together a candidate profile based upon all the feedback received. And hope to post the position in March and hope to be interviewing in April. And then when we're down to a finalist list of candidates, we'll have some community engagement piece to that as well.
and the last thing is Year of the Parks, if you have any updates on that.
We have submitted actually, we called it a conversation piece to the Community Foundation for Year of the Parks, and met today with leadership from the Community Foundation just to talk about that a little bit more and have them hear kind of where we were with it, and if there's, how to move forward, I guess, with the concept. And so I think we're gonna hopefully see how we can move forward together on it. Several of the pieces are funded through other sources, but the Community Foundation would be a pivotal contributor to that, I think.
Okay, any questions for the mayor? Okay, if none, I will welcome Jim Wilson to our quorum and mention that he missed the reading of his name and his congratulations from the Tree Commission to him as a newly appointed representative to the library board. And we did mention the the book that the library has chosen for Arbor Day month. And I'm sure you'll want to put it on your reading list.
I will check the minutes so that I make sure that I read.
Okay. I will let you know. I will let you know. But congratulations. It's a great, great board. And
My retirement plans are getting clearer.
I know, I know. Well, I will have to say Voorhees has had a long history of being involved with the library board. And I think it's a tribute to both you and the company that they're continuing that. So congratulations. Okay, Elena, do you have anything?
Madam Chair, before she goes into that, I have several child duties this evening.
Okay,
So Elena is here to take fantastic notes and badger me about any follow-up.
okay, let's see if there's anything we need to badger you
Gently
about.
badger.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is.
I
But
mean,
we
the
can-
most important part of the meeting is over, so.
Yeah, well, I know. Well,
For you.
yeah, I was gonna say, I hope that we learned something from the work that Jim and the commission members have done on the tree canopy assessment assignments, as we've looked at 14 other communities across the country, and Jim will update us on that.
Great.
So we'll share that with you. Okay, thank you for being with us today. Okay, so Miss Elena?
No.
No, she has a no and a no. Okay.
So, I mean, I think just as a small aside, so no updates on approved, kind of an installed landscapes. A couple of things that you might have heard about that are coming down the pipe. One is 81 North Drexel, the old Huntington Mansion. That has been tabled the last couple of BZAP meetings. They need to have a variance. They didn't have a quorum. They needed to get further, kind of legal information on it. And so the goal is hopefully this month that they're able to review it. And then even though it is a private residence, it has been kicked, and by the recommendation, I think, of the ARB to the tree commission for us to be able to review. And so that landscape will come to us in either March or April for us to review. So just kind of giving you a heads up on that. And then just, following up on other projects within the community. I'm working on a number of small little, kind of design projects that, at some point, probably during the spring and summer, are going to be coming forward to the tree commission for us to look at. Small update on we've just been calling the 1908 Plaza that is going before Capital University for their board for them to review to see if it's something that they are, going to be okay with going forward. I think it's in late February. So, we're trying to kind of push that project along, looking at doing a trailhead over at Drexel. So a lot of these have to do with what, we were just talking about a little bit of the year of the parks. We're trying to narrow down what are some of the projects that we're pushing forward that we can kind of pull all of this together and then move forward. And that will be unveiling probably also within the next couple of months. We'll be able to share a kind of a little bit more robust update with all of you on that. So there have been a lot of kind of behind the scenes that are going on that is fun, but it's just, I don't have anything formally to kind of unveil yet.
We'll wait for the big stage.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. All right. Well, thank you. Okay, Jim, urban tree canopy assessment assignments. So, yeah, great.
So I got here just in time.
Just in time. That's right.
Um,
That's right.
So Susan distributed a document that I got to her yesterday, I think it was. And I initially, I had this grant-like image of a very nice table showing everyone's results, but that wasn't really feasible. And as I looked at the research you all had done, it didn't really fit into the table that I was trying to impose on you. So recognizing that this has a lot of my judgment about what's interesting in it, what I tried to do was go through everyone's reports, and there were a few loose ends of where people hadn't gotten their work done, but tried to look at sort of what we learned, both, first of all, in terms of ordinances regarding tree protection. And frankly, there's a wealth of resources there. I'm not sure we would adopt any of those ordinances if it were up to us as they're written, but I think we could take pieces of them and do some useful stuff. In terms of tree commissions, I didn't see anyone that was really doing it better than us, although there was I think I put in there this one provision from Lake Horn, Mississippi, where they affirmatively had the right to make recommendations, or it was part of their responsibilities. We do that anyway, so I'm not sure we want to introduce into the debate whether we should be, but it's a possibility if we wanted in the future. I think when I first came on, we had revised our ordinance and sort of laid out our role, so it's probably not quite time to do it again, but for future reference, we could do that. And then just sort of some other ideas, like Issaquah, I thought had a really good model for a FAQ sheet. And we've from time to time talked about putting together FAQs that our residents could pull up on the website that would make it hopefully avoid misunderstandings that we from time to time have with residents. And so that would be a good model. You know, the most important idea I thought that came out of this was that several of the jurisdictions have long-range plans regarding or strategic plans regarding canopy coverage. And my own sense is that if we wanted to have stricter ordinances, we would have to make that case to city council that we should that there were values higher than people's ability to do what they want on their own private property. And so my suggestion, and I'm willing to be part of this, is that we sort of take these learnings, take some of the strategic plans that we've seen from other jurisdictions and sort of put together first an outline of what a strategic plan might look like, and then figure out what work we have to do for that to be a Bexley strategic plan rather than, you know, Squanami or someplace in Washington State where they do have very big trees compared to our trees. So that is my suggestion. I'm more than happy to answer any questions about the document, recognizing that if you got through it, you had a lot of free time by the time Susan sent it to.
I do have a question. Could you pan back to three, right, there we go, three other ideas. And Jim, you mentioned something about the very good model in fact sheet for the tree removal.
Mhm.
I'd like to add to that is also transplanting, because we've had people come here and wanting their trees transplanted.
Yeah.
And we'll have more, we'll probably have more of that, I mean, for a short while, but I think that we are getting smarter at assigning a correct placement.
So if I remember correctly, all the cities that we reviewed have a higher percentage tree canopy coverage than we have. So
Right.
to Jim's point, why is that? It could be bigger trees or bigger area, or it could be, as he's suggesting, you know, regulations and ordinances. And if we want to increase our coverage, it does feel, at least from these examples, that our regulations and ordinances have to address additional topics, whatever they might be.
Would there
Yes.
question of, does it address somewhere the opportunities to put more trees? I mean, or since we may just have a lot more streets than other places. Some of the, you know, because the two places I looked in Washington, they're bigger, they have, and again, they have a huge forest area. So
Yeah.
I don't know how many opportunities we have to increase our canopy.
Well, it's our urban tree canopy coverage, 69% of our coverage is on private property.
Oh,
So it's 2/3. I mean, I think Larry said at one time, we can come through and plant all the remaining spots on the streets that we can.
Right.
And that would help. And we are in control of that. But that's still not going to tip the scales in favor.
Yeah, I didn't get the sense that there are people out there or municipalities out there doing better than us on
Yeah.
street trees. Where they have more vigorous regulation is not just new builds having a tree protection plan, but any kind of construction, and that would be a push for Bexley. And
Yeah.
frankly, by the time we get there, maybe every available space of coverage will be done, given how much
Yeah.
construction is going on in Bexley. But that seems like an opportunity. There seems to be, broader areas of protection of existing trees in other municipalities.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I don't know what council will be willing to do, but my sense is they're not going to consider doing anything unless we sort of make the case for it.
And I wonder if, because I think it would be a potentially really, I think, hard sell to say that you can't, any property that if you buy a house in Bexley, you're not allowed to tear down any old growth trees, right? I mean, I think that would be legally very difficult to enforce starting now, right? If it had always existed, that might be one thing. Because of people wanting to be like, I want to tear down, I want to build new, I want to do all of this. So, but that is definitely an option, right? I mean, that could be something that's like, you have to show a definite hardship that you can't have an architect design around this existing tree in some way. The other thing that I wonder is if there is a way for the city to incentivize private people to plant trees, like, do you get a tax break? Do you get an allowance? I mean, rather than our free tree giveaway, right? Which is, 50 trees a year, right? Is there something that we can do at a much bigger area to sort of say, hey, if you plant an oak because you live in North Bexley and you have, 3 acres of land and your house can actually do it, are you able to, based on the size of the tree and the mature size that it can get realistically, right? Do you get some kind of cash back or something, right? I mean, I think it's going to have to be something like it'll have to be some kind of incentive that the city has that people realize, oh, because I think the majority of homeowners see trees as messy and their lawn doesn't grow, right? I think that is a lot of people who are not educated on trees are like, I love the tree lined street, but I don't want it in my yard. I want someone else to deal with it because it's an insurance issue. It's this, it's that. And so I think there's like an educational component that we have to really push out to let people know the value of trees and how it actually increases the cost of your home. But then is there a way for people to realize, well, you don't maybe need a huge giant backyard that just has pristine mowed lawn, plop a couple of trees in there and then, something to consider maybe.
Well, I was going to say, at least in my 2 cities, that for something that was a new build, there was a lot coverage. You had to have so many kind of shade trees, such shade trees. And then also I wrote to Jim in Arlington, if you have a disturbance, I love this, disturbance of the soil of 2,500 square feet. So it's a new build, it's a remodeling, it's an addition, you need a landscape plan. And then the landscape plan leverages shade trees. I mean, I thought that was also interesting because disturbance doesn't define, new build versus remodeling. So I thought that was interesting. And then again, in Arlington, if you're taking down a tree, it's $2,400, take down a tree. And when I talked to Vincent, he said he just billed someone $500,000 and they didn't blink an eye. So he said, I'm obviously not charging enough. So I mean, so there are, to your point, there are different ways that we can look at growing the canopy.
I have a question for Sheila, being our realtor on our board. Maybe we could incentivize a sort of a terminology that this particular property is a Arboretum star winner or something, so that it can be part of a listing for a house, rather than someone seeing it as a negative, like it's not really accounted for to begin with right now, unless you go on a map or you drive by. But if on a realtor website, if it has some award for having a certain percentage of canopy on their property, that would be nice.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yes.
One thing that might occur to me when Elena was speaking is it might be useful at some point before we go to council to talk to Mark Fischel about what Ohio law would allow us to do and what it wouldn't, because certainly council is going to listen to his advice, and we ought to try to shape anything we do to not get a negative recommendation from our city attorney.
Okay, so Jim, I'm sure you know this, the Dillon rule. the Dillon rule in the state of Virginia is that, I think I'm saying this right, that municipalities can only regulate what is already in the state code. They cannot make up additional.
And I don't know if that, I mean, Ohio traditionally has been a home rule state, which meant that municipalities had a lot of discretion.
Okay,
That's been whittled away over gun control and plastic bags in recent years. But I think that having some guidance from Mark, not maybe at the beginning, but
Yeah,
before we
I
would
agree.
shape an ordinance would be good. I did mean to say this, the one thing that sort of struck me as something that we could implement sooner was one of these, and I can find it, had a requirement when you're creating a parking lot for deciduous trees to be in the parking lot. And that seems to be, to me, to be not a heavy lift in terms of convincing council or exercising our own discretion, but sort of be more vigorous in requiring that. I know that, I think one of the banks came to us and we wanted trees and they said, well, then we won't redo our parking lot, but sooner or later, they're gonna have to redo their parking lot. So
yeah. I thought that was in the Main Street guidelines, Molly, that parking lots have to have a shade tree or that to mitigate the hotspots. Right. But worth looking into.
I'd like to point out in one of my cities, they have a $20,000 bond that a contractor has to put on any a major tree, anything over 16 inches in diameter. It's not terribly major, 16 inches, but that's a lot of money.
It is. So Jim, your thoughts moving forward is that we look at a study group that would look at how to put together a strategic plan or what elements we want in a strategic plan.
yes, that's my suggestion.
Okay.
If you wanted it as a motion, I can do that.
Well, I think that would be a good idea. And if we look at the inhabitants in that little study group, do you think it's all tree commission people, or do you think it's a community group with a nucleus of tree commission people, or do you have, are you?
I think we need at least a couple tree commission folks. I think it might be nice to see if someone from Parks and Rec were willing to be part of it,
Okay.
since they do hold a lot of our tree population. And then, yeah, I mean, at least extending the invitation to the community, I think would be a good idea. I don't know whether we'll get interest or not, but I guess the other group that might be interested in this is sort of the environmental sustainability
It could
group.
be. Right.
And, you know, Parks and Rec and environmental sustainability seem to have a lot of clout in Bexley
Yeah.
these days. So
Yeah, so some other thoughts. Well, if you'd like to make a motion, we could deal with that. And then when we have our meeting with the mayor to plan our agenda in a few weeks, we can talk about this, Elena, and see if he would, take his pulse on it.
I move that the tree commission form a study group for purposes of creating a strategic plan with respect to the canopy in Bexley, concluding membership from the tree commission, other interested groups in the city, and residents that might be interested.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, a motion's been made and seconded that we move forward with a study group to look at improving our urban tree canopy coverage and involve the community as the community would like to be involved. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Okay, motion carries. All right, well, we'll see if we can get that started. Thanks for putting this together. I know it may not have been a labor of love. It may just been laborious, but it's fabulous to see what's out there and to see just little ideas that might be helpful. For instance, on one of mine, I think that you did list, Jim, in Tupelo, Mississippi, they plant a tree 12 feet from a dying tree
Right.
and let it get established for a couple of years, then take down the dying tree. So there's already some presence there.
Yeah, and I'm sorry Grant's not here because I would have been interested in his
Yeah.
reaction to that.
Well, he'll be here. He's recovering from COVID.
Right.
Or he's in the throes of COVID, so he'll be here another time. Okay, so do you have any naming right updates you wanted to share?
Only that I did meet with the mayor and Mark Fischel. I got some comments from them. I revised the draft, but was left with a couple questions that this week I sent back to the mayor and Mark that are sort of structural, really having to deal with whether the policy would have this commission and Parks and Rec have sort of final authority or have to go then up to the mayor or city council. I wasn't clear from the mayor's comments what he was suggesting there. And so clarifying his view seemed important.
I agree. Okay, well, we'll wait to see what.
But it's
the-
close.
Yeah, okay, that's pretty good. I mean, I'm not even sure it's been 6 months, so I think that's just like a miracle. Okay, new business. I just listed the goals that I was able to discern from the minutes from last meeting. I know Linda, you talked about cleaning up the west side of Cassidy between Broad and Maryland, leveraging tree canopy information, making Arbor Day fun and educational for all residents, focusing on policies on what's allowed in the right-of-way tree lawn, promoting Hugsy website, improving communication with, that should be ARB and BZAP. I don't know if I missed others, but I thought we could go through those and at least maybe assign someone to look at those and see if we can move them forward. Jim, it feels like leveraging the tree canopy information is what the strategic plan study group would be doing. So Linda, looking at Cassidy, as I reviewed the notes, Grant was saying that he felt we should come up with a concept for that. He feels the plant material is doing what it should be doing. And I think we are feeling that it needs to have some organization. I was wondering if we could persuade Elena to walk with us on Cassidy in her, hip boots and, reflective material. Would that be something that we could, kind of hoodwink you into doing?
Yeah, I can do that because I think that, I mean, from other than the ivy that I saw that's kind of growing errantly, I mean, the taxus is kind of doing what it needs to do and the hawthorns are doing what they need to do. So I think if it would be helpful to walk it with you both and then get a better understanding of what it is. Like, is it an aesthetic thing? Is it just, do we start over? Is it, I mean,
I think it's cleaning up. I think
Okay.
Cleaning up and cleaning out. Some of the hawthorns need pruned. There are places where hawthorns have died and not been replanted. There are places where I think arborvitae have outgrown their usefulness. So I think it's a little bit of everything.
okay.
But it did feel when we were walking it before that it's sort of at that point that if it's not tended, it will not be viable for much
Okay.
longer.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
and we'll see, maybe you'd have a contrary view and that's fine, but at least we'll have, another set of.
Yeah, and it might be something as easy as if we walk it, take pictures, make a note and just be like dead tree, missing tree, stump, missing, and so if it's something like that, that it doesn't necessarily need because since it's not a massive formal corridor, we just want it to look clean and, kind of intentional. It might just be as simple as that. And just, it's a couple of notes to be like, okay, crew, go and do this. And so we don't need to, do up any elaborate designs and renderings
I
and
don't
things like
think we
that.
do.
It's just kind of like, let's just do some basic housekeeping.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think we can also try and ask Grant to time that with letters to residents on Ashbourne, telling them that we're looking at that and if they have ivy growing into the right of way to trim it back or overhanging. We also found, was it honeysuckle? Honeysuckle overhanging. So
Okay.
something
And
like
maybe
that.
also a reminder, often you'll find if they have landscaping done and it's both fall and the spring, that they get the dump of leaves on Cassidy as opposed to in front of their house.
Right.
And then they also get the dump, of grass material. So
Right. Okay, so we'll put Linda, Sheila, Elena, and I'm happy to organize if need be.
then maybe it would be good, since we thought some of those hawthorns were dead, that we wait until it starts greening to give us a better idea.
Good
that
idea,
It is
yeah.
or not.
Okay. So we've got the leverage tree canopy, making Arbor Day fun and educational for all residents. Do you think we're doing that? Linda, Celeste, Sheila, and I are all on that committee, so I think we're doing okay.
We're kind of banging up against the Green Initiative people who
Mm,
wound up with another events the same day. We're like, oh, well,
Yeah, that's a challenge. Focusing on policies on what's allowed in the right of way and tree lawn. I think we're all still struggling with who's overseeing that and why it's not being more effective. I think that's probably a conversation with the mayor. I mean, Elena, I don't know if you can address that with him in your weekly meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why after our ordinance about the trees and the stumps and then the one Richard Sharp did, why we still have that garden in the tree lawn off of east of Cassidy. Is that Dale or Powell?
Yeah.
Powell.
There's a couple
Yeah, and then we've got a bench on Fair Avenue on the north side and the right of way between the tree and the curb. And I would be surprised if people have not reported that. But if it's a case of reporting, that's easy. It's a case of follow through. That's something city does. Jim Wilson once said something that I have taken to heart, is that we can make the ordinances, but then the city decides what ordinances to enforce. That's a very hard lesson.
I don't even remember saying that, but I was thinking that when no one shoveled their snow.
Yes, someone just mentioned that to me. So if you could check on that, Elena, and then we'll see. Okay. Mine was promoting the Hugsy website, and I'll continue to do that with different little announcements, and then improving communication with ARB and BZAP. Elena, I think you're working on that your own way, and that's been helpful.
Trying, yes.
Yeah, well, that's right. Is there any other new business? Jim?
Well, I remember the other idea I had, which may not be worth pursuing, but it was sort of looking at what the cost of maintenance is for projects that we approve.
Right.
And maybe that's just a sort of commitment that when someone comes to us with a project, we ask them, okay, how's the cost of maintenance built into this? But it does seem to me, in terms of the long term of the city, important that we can pay for what we create. So
I agree. And then if we pay forward, if we have a maintenance budget, where does that money go?
Right.
That's the other thing. I don't know, Elena, when you design a plan, let's say you're designing a landscape and it costs $100,000. Do you ever talk to the client that $100,000 plan is going to cost you 10% of that a year to maintain, or 20%?
No, because it's, that's one of the things where there are different levels of maintenance. And so, if like for a commercial property, if you were, having like, say, the Honda plant or something, right? You might have areas where they call kind of like an A, B, or a C level, or they call it a 1, 2, or 3, or depending. And where it's like, okay, you might have 0 tolerance for snow. You want to have, it mowed twice a week. You want it weeded. You want it mulched as soon as possible, and all of this. And then you might have different levels that go down. So I think that it'd be very difficult to sort of say, hey, if it costs this much, your maintenance of this is going to be this much, because it depends on how much you maintain it, right? So how perfectly do you trim things? How often do you clean it? How often do you weed it? How often do you mulch it? I think that is, I don't know if the city does this or not. This would be an Andy question. If the city does have certain zones where they're like, okay, well, we spend more time and attention to Drexel Circle than we do Cassidy. Right? Because that's high visibility. We are out there and we're planting our bulbs and our pansies and we're doing all of this versus, Cassidy, we're like, it's fine. It'll be okay. So, I mean, we can talk to them. And I think that, people have talked about it, but that I've not, I mean, Molly, I don't know if you've come across that ever, but I've never had like someone say, if you install this, you can anticipate an increase in maintenance. But I'm also never on the maintenance release side of things.
Right.
So it might exist and I just don't know about it.
Well, you know, if you ever talk to anybody in maintenance, they're always understaffed and overwhelmed. That is what they are.
Yeah.
How to make it better for them, I think, you know.
Of course, it used to be money would make it better, but now it's staffing.
Those
I mean,
people.
you know, people have money, but they don't have a staff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it is, it's just, you know, it's a job some people love, but I mean, it is, you ask a lot, you may not get it.
So another question, Elena, would be if, yeah, this is just an informational question. If you're building a building of $1 million, what percentage should be, you know, segregated to landscape plan?
50%.
50%. I couldn't agree more. And then another 50% for maintenance, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's something that's tough is if you are doing $1 million landscape, I would say that at a minimum, you want to have probably, you know, $100,000. So, you know, say 10% of your budget. Usually what I have found so far is the landscape, most contractors, if they're just working on the house, they're like 20 grand, here's your landscape, that's going to be fine. That covers very, very little. 20 grand might cover and teeny little plants, right? And so I would say the majority of time I come in to a design process and, you know, they have this beautiful $2.3 million home and they have 50K for the outdoor environment that they have 8,000 pictures on Pinterest of a roof structure and a fireplace and a gas fire pit and a pool and a water feature in this. And I'm like, that is a $500,000 investment in your landscape. So I would, the landscape industry, I think, is getting better about advocating themselves in terms of design and understanding that like you need to look at this at the front end. And it's not something to sort of say, because a contractor for a lot of these like new build communities and stuff, right? Like, you know, where they're just doing house after house, they will do a 3-foot concrete sidewalk that kind of curves up to your front door and a couple of boxwoods, maybe some arbs, you know, maybe some taxus and probably like a river birch because it's fancy, but they'll plant it 2 feet from the foundation of your home. And that's your landscape package. And so a lot of times people just say, okay, I'm going to do this. And they have then just spent $15,000 to do this work that is just kind of just crap and it all needs to come out and get redone. So, you know, I would say personally, 10%.
Okay.
I think realistically.
I mean, I think we've never asked that question, but sometimes when we see commercial builds come forward, I keep thinking, you know, I'm not sure I can ask this in front of them, but it would be a good barometer to have in my back pocket.
Yeah.
You know, you got $1 million building and you got 3 arbs and 2 taxus and a flower pot, you know?
Yeah.
So we now know 10%.
I did think of you when I saw the ordinance that required not only a landscaping plan, but an irrigation plan.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Okay. So if there aren't any other new goals, Lorianne is not feeling up to her normal perky, wonderful self. So we don't have a city council report. And unless there's anything from Barb and Ellen in Florida, I think we could be adjourned. Barb and Ellen, do you have anything more to say? We've lost you kind of there.
Oh, no, I have nothing more to say.
Okay, Barb.
No, I will have to say, what about relooking Del Mar? And maybe the time to do that would be in 2023 when they move the wall basically at that corner.
I think
at,
that's an excellent idea.
Del Mar and Cassidy,
Yeah.
that we include
Now, what do you think
looking.
of that? Yeah, I mean, it is sad. We've lost
It
a
is
lot of
sad.
hemlocks. We've lost a lot of, I think, euonymus. We've got a lot of invasive vines growing through there.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
do think that the mayor, maybe that would be a time too. He did talk about improving the street. As you know, the street sits higher than the soil on either side, so it's always wet there. And he talked about maybe curbing it. It would be great if it came together one time.
Right.
So
So it just seems like I'm just throwing it out now because, you know, we're always looking future, and particularly since, you know, it's already been kind of in 2023, moving that wall. Well, to me, it just seemed like, wouldn't that be a wonderful time to just continue that whole project on down Del Mar? So,
right. Okay.
other than that, it
Well-
was a great meeting.
Quick
was a
one.
great meeting.
Yeah.
Quick
Yeah.
one, yeah. I was gonna say, it must be that the big talkers aren't here. Larry, did you hear that? No. Oh, so anything else?
I
No,
just had
just-
one thought
Yes, Barb.
about, when we're talking about doing the medians down Drexel, I think we should evaluate the medians on Broad Street. The difficulty we've had of people, running into things. I know it's a faster, more traffic, faster speed limit, higher speed limit. But I think the lighting is not terribly effective on Broad Street myself. I think maybe we should look at that. And in view of the fact that we're going to be putting, medians in another area, I think we ought to, I just think we ought to look at it and then maybe compare, maybe get some good ideas.
Okay, okay.
Oh, one more thing. Is the St.
agree.
Charles or the Sessions Village, is that median completing down to the
Oh,
end of
no,
the,
we don't, the light is not in there.
and still not, okay.
The light's not in.
I do agree with Barb. I think from Parkview West to Nelson, that area may need to be looked at. At different times, I think it does seem to be dark.
Yeah, well, right now, what is it, the winter creepers growing over the.
Lighting.
Yeah, the lights. And so that doesn't help. Plus the speed on Broad Street, in my opinion, has become rather extraordinary.
Oh, yeah, there's no
Yeah.
doubt about that.
No
There
doubt
is no
about that.
doubt
And
about
so I
that.
do think it's two different animals, Broad Street and Drexel. Drexel's an internal.
Well, I think it is
residential
too,
street.
but I just think that,
Yeah,
I just,
well, you're
I
not
don't know.
wrong. Yeah, you're not wrong, Barb.
Yeah, we can learn from
There may be
something.
street lights on every median on Broad Street.
That personally, Susan, that's what I think.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have to be the same, it'd have to be lower, more, I don't know what, because the design would have to just be perfect so that it wouldn't be, abrasive almost when you're seeing it too light. But
Yeah,
I wouldn't, I don't think that is a bad idea.
okay, okay. Well, with those gentle hints and suggestions, I adjourn the meeting and we'll look for you on March 23rd, 4:00, post spring break.
Oh, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Take care.
So how long was your video conference, Jim? 3 hours?
Till 4:30.